A show of hands, was anyone at either the St. Anne's or the BAM performances back in 1990? No. What, Ed, can you tell me about the decision to not include the audience applause? I thought that was very curious.
Well, when I had done it was Red Hot and Blue, it was an AIDS benefit with Annie Lennox and Derek Jarman. And Derek Jarman was, this little history up to it. He was too ill. And so he gave me his home movies. He said, why don't you use my home movies? And because Annie Lennox always has this pancake white face, I projected his home movies on her face, singing Every Time You Say Goodbye. And it got a lot of recognition in England, and so they came to me and said, would I do this concert that was an homage, a memorial to Andy. So I met with Lou and John, and the first thing Lou said to me is, I don't want any F cameras between me and the audience. So that made me think about it, like what was I gonna do? And I then came back and said, well, could I shoot your rehearsals? And just be in the same wardrobe that you're gonna be in for the performance. So I shot 2 days of rehearsal with just myself and a small crew. I had a dolly. And what I realized is the point of view was really between them. It's not the audience. And and it gave me a sense that I could be so intimate with them and be so close to them. And so I shot for 2 days with my crew, and then the one night performance, I had multiple cameras, and those cameras were off stage. But that was kind of the evolution of why, and then I decided, like, why have an audience? Because I always wanted it as a conceptual piece, that you were the audience. So you always feel like this performance is for the first time. And the other thing is, they always say the close-up is the medium for the television set. So that was another thing in the back of my mind, that I would shoot primarily in close-ups and very stripped down, kind of like the sensibility of what Warhol's work was about, and about, the Velvet Underground, this kind of minimalistic framing.
And so 1973, we learned, was the first time you met Lou.
Yeah.
When had you met John?
I met John the first time when we did this.
You did this. And had you ever, did you know Andy Warhol, or had you worked with him previous?
I had been to the studio. I was old enough to be around that scene, but I wasn't really part of it.
And if there are any questions from the audience, go ahead and raise your hand. Spencer will come around with a microphone.
So I found the thing that was most, I guess, curious was the, like, kind of when John Cale's like singing things that are like not so flattering about Lou Reed, and other moments where they kind of reference their Lou's like rough relationship with Andy Warhol. And I was curious about, I guess, your philosophy toward those sort of, like, were you trying to catch like a moment of like awkwardness or like pain in either of them, or just like how are you thinking about like how they were reacting to this, like?
Well, my background's documentary. I didn't know what I would get, but it comes through, what their relationship, because it's like a confessional also, the piece, the more I listened to it before I shot it. And it was also about the relationship between them, but also the relationship they had with Andy. And part of another stylistic consideration I did was something that you don't normally get to do, is that I could move the dolly. I would give hand signals to the dolly grip. So I would move the dolly to the emotion I felt in the performance. And it was kind of a self-discovery for me about what was there. I didn't, that's nothing you can pre-plan. You just have to be there in the moment.
This is my first time hearing any of the song cycle. Was this the complete song cycle, what we just heard now?
Actually not. You know, a little history behind it was, you know, on and off for 30 years, there was this terrible laser disc put out by Warner Brothers, because it was never really shown here. And I went to them and asked them, could you put a DVD out for it? And nobody could find the elements. Actually, I have neighbors here, so they know my loft is full of boxes, hundreds of boxes. And the lab Duart had closed, and 3 or 5 years ago, I said to them, send me any negative with my name on it, and they sent the negative to me. So when we started the Velvet Underground, I told Todd about this concert, but he made a decision not to show anything that wasn't between 63, 64 and the early 70s when they finally broke up. So I asked the producers if they would help me find it, and we wrote letters to Channel 4, Initial Films, and we found out it was sold. Anyway, nobody could find the elements. Well, lo and behold, during the pandemic, I'm going through all these boxes, and there's the A and B rolls, the original negative. So then the problem was that there was an optical track and the sound off the Laserdisc, but there wasn't any really good masters of the sound. So we went back to Warner Brothers, and they found the original mix of this concert. And then I found somebody who does sound restoration, who was into the Velvet Underground, and said it's just X's and O's. I can sync it up. So it was actually in a different order, and they had added a song from St. Anne's to BAM. So he re-sunk everything up and did a new mix.
Any other questions? Raise your hand. I think we have one in the very far back there, Spencer. So how many performances were there at both St. Anne's and BAM? Was it one night in
No,
each
I
location?
think there were 2 nights performances at BAM, and I don't know how many were.
In the back?
All right, that final song, Goodbye to Andy, it was in black and white. Was that a stylistic choice or a different film stock, or?
Mm-hmm. You know, when now that we have negative and we can do something in a DI, a digital intermediate, where we can color correct, so I could bring out things that I couldn't do before. And I had tried, what the other advantage of me shooting these rehearsals was I could change things between the songs. So generally, you know, cinematographers are kind of a slave to what the show is, because they don't want you to change the lighting in the show. But I was able now to change some of the lighting, and I always wanted certain songs to be in black and white. So what I did at the time was make the color rendition more monochromatic. But in this DI, I made them black and white. I just went for it because the projections in those scenes were also in black and white, and he was also referencing Andy's love for that period of filmmaking in Hollywood. So that I just took that liberty.
I guess that makes me wonder if Lou and John had any creative control or feedback or suggestions for you for this project? Or was it entirely up to
They
you?
were doing their music, and you know, I edited it in New York, but they didn't really see it till it was finished.
So what did Lou Reed mean exactly when he said do it like Andy and he kicked the tripod? Is he just getting the tripod
I
out of
asked
there?
him, I don't think I ever knew. It's funny because Todd's reaction was, well, Andy didn't shoot hand hold, but he did hold his Bolex, you know. I don't know, I think he just wanted it to be free, you know.
Any other questions out there in the audience? Here's one.